No money, no service. Get out.
I have an account here.
You? You? An account? Nappy head, crusty shoes, smelling like last week. You can barely afford the bus ride here. Get out!
You can't talk to me like...
Security. Now! Drag this thing out!
Don't touch me.
Move!
A guard grabbed her arm and pushed a 74-year-old black woman onto the sidewalk. Her knees hit concrete. Her glasses cracked against the pavement.
Todd straightened his tie and walked back inside without looking back. He had no idea that in 3 hours, he'd be the one escorted out of that building. Bernice Owens woke up the same way she had every morning for the last 3 years. Alone. The left side of the bed was still made. Lionel's pillow hadn't moved. She kept it there because the empty space felt wrong without it. She shuffled to the kitchen in her house slippers. A modest colonial home in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia. Nothing fancy. White shutters, a garden out front she tended herself. Inside, the walls were lined with framed photos. Lionel in a hard hat at a shipping yard. Lionel shaking hands with a senator. Lionel holding their daughter Clarice the day she was born. Lionel Owens had co-founded Owens & Pratt Logistics in 1983. Started with 2 trucks and a rented warehouse. By the time he died, that company had become one of the largest minority-owned freight operations on the East Coast. The acquisition deal alone was worth 9 figures. But you'd never know it looking at Bernice. She drove a 2016 Buick with a dent in the rear bumper. She clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. She donated through her church, not through galas. Lionel had been the same way. Money talks, he used to say, but it don't need to scream. Bernice made her breakfast. Toast, a soft-boiled egg, Earl Grey tea in a chipped mug that read, "World's Best Grandma." She turned on the gospel station, let it fill the kitchen while she ate. At 8:30, she called her daughter. "Morning, baby." "Morning, Mama. You still going to the bank today?" "Yes, ma'am. Raymond said I need to sign the transfer papers in person." "You want me to come with you?" "For what? I'm moving money, not moving furniture." Clarice laughed. Bernice smiled. That was the last easy moment of her day. Raymond Ellis, Bernice's financial advisor for over 20 years, had been straightforward. Heritage First National Bank wasn't giving the Owens Family Trust the attention it deserved. The fees were too high. The estate tools were outdated. He recommended moving the bulk of her holdings, roughly $30 million, to a different institution. Bernice agreed, but she wanted to do it in person. She didn't trust computers for anything over $50. Lionel had been the same way. Sign it, stamp it, look them in the eye. She put on her favorite floral dress, grabbed her worn leather handbag, slipped on her flat shoes, the comfortable ones, not the pretty ones. She didn't put on jewelry, didn't think she needed to. She pulled into the Heritage First parking lot at 9:10 a.m. The branch was Heritage First's newly renovated flagship in Richmond's financial district. Glass walls, marble floors, a digital screen behind the reception desk rotating the words, "Premier Private Banking," for clients who expect more. Todd Branson had managed this branch for 4 years. On paper, his numbers were excellent. Client retention was up, revenue targets were met, corporate loved him. But his staff knew a different story. Todd ran the floor like it was a velvet rope nightclub. He decided who got the private lounge and who got the plastic chairs. Well-dressed white clients were greeted by name. Everyone else waited. Darlene Hobbs, a 29-year-old teller, had noticed the pattern for months. She'd watched Todd walk past elderly black customers to shake hands with a white couple in tennis shoes. She'd seen him redirect a Latino businessman to general services when the man's account balance was 6 figures. She never reported it. She needed the job. She had student loans. She told herself it wasn't her place. She'd regret that silence before the day was over. Bernice walked through the glass doors at 9:15 a.m.
The lobby smelled like fresh coffee and new carpet. Soft jazz played from ceiling speakers. She took a number, 43, and sat in the waiting area. She folded her hands in her lap and waited the way she always waited. Patiently. Quietly. Like someone who'd spent 74 years being told the world would get to her when it was ready. She had no idea what was about to happen. 25 minutes passed. Bernice watched the lobby move around her like she wasn't there. A young white couple walked in at 9:20. Todd greeted them at the door personally. Handshake, smile. He walked them straight to the private banking suite in the back. Glass door closed behind them. Coffee was brought in on a tray. A white man in a golf shirt came in at 9:25. No appointment, no tie. Todd waved him past the line within 5 minutes. Bernice sat. Her number was 43. The screen above the counter still read 39. At 9:30, a black man in a business suit walked in. He stood at the reception desk for 6 minutes before anyone acknowledged him. When a teller finally helped him, she directed him to the general services window, the one next to the restroom. The man looked confused but didn't argue. Bernice noticed. She didn't say anything, but she noticed. At 9:40, her number finally appeared on the screen. She stood up slowly. Her knees ached from sitting in the hard plastic chair. She walked to the counter where Darlene Hobbs was working. Darlene smiled. A real smile, not the corporate kind. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" "Morning, sweetheart. I need to speak with the manager about a transfer on my account. A large one." "Of course. Can I pull up your account first?" Bernice handed over her ID. Darlene typed in the information. The screen loaded. Darlene's fingers stopped moving. She blinked, looked at the screen again, looked at Bernice, back at the screen. The account flag read, Owens Family Trust, Premier Tier, High Value. The balance had more zeros than Darlene had ever seen on her monitor. "Ma'am, let me get the manager for you right away." "Thank you, baby." Darlene stood up from her window and walked to Todd's office. She knocked twice. "Mr. Branson? There's a client here requesting a meeting about a large account transfer. Her account is flagged Premier." Todd didn't look up from his computer. "Premier? Who is it?" "Her name is Bernice Owens. Owens?" He glanced through the glass wall toward the lobby. He saw Bernice standing at the counter. Floral dress, worn handbag, no jewelry, flat shoes. He looked at Darlene. "That woman?" "Yes, sir. Her account is—" "I'll handle it." He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the counter. But not the way he walked toward the white couple earlier. No handshake, no smile, no coffee tray. He stopped 3 feet from Bernice and looked her over, head to toe, slowly, like he was inspecting something left on the sidewalk. "Ma'am, what can I do for you?" "I'd like to discuss a transfer from my trust account. My financial advisor, Raymond Ellis, should have called ahead." "I haven't received any calls." That was a lie. Raymond had called at 9:30. Todd's assistant took the message and left it on his desk. It was sitting under his coffee cup right now. "Well, I have my ID and my account number right here. I just need to sit with someone who can process." "Ma'am," Todd held up his hand, "our private banking services are appointment only, for verified clients." "I am a verified client." "Our Premier Tier requires a minimum relationship of $250,000. He looked at her handbag, at her shoes. "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you meet that threshold." He hadn't checked. He hadn't typed a single key. He hadn't even glanced at a screen. He reached behind the counter and pulled out a glossy brochure, slid it across to her. "This is our community savings program. Might be a better fit for someone in your situation. There's also an ATM in the vestibule if you need to make a basic withdrawal." Bernice looked at the brochure. She didn't pick it up. "Young man,
I've been a client of this bank for over 15 years.
And I appreciate that. But our premier suite isn't available for walk-ins. You can call our general number to schedule an appointment. He was already turning away. Darlene, help the next customer. He walked back toward his office. Bernice stood at the counter, alone. The brochure sat between her and the glass. Darlene stared at her keyboard, her jaw tight.
I'm sorry, Darlene whispered. I tried to tell him.
It's not your fault, sweetheart. Bernice picked up her handbag and walked to the waiting area. She sat back down in the same plastic chair. She pulled out her phone and dialed Raymond Ellis.
Raymond, I'm at the bank. The manager won't see me.
Raymond was quiet for a moment. He what? He gave me a brochure for a savings account and told me to use the ATM. Bernice, you hold $30 million in that building.
I know what I hold.
I'm calling the bank right now. Raymond hung up and dialed Heritage First directly. The call went to Todd's assistant, a young woman named Kelsey, who answered with a rehearsed voice.
Heritage First National, Mr. Branson's office.
This is Raymond Ellis with Ellis Wealth Advisory. I need to speak with Mr. Branson regarding the Owens Family Trust account. It's urgent.
I'm sorry, Mr. Branson is with a client right now. Can I take a message?
You can tell him that a $30 million client is sitting in his lobby and being ignored. Kelsey paused. Then she said,
I'll pass that along,
and hung up. She wrote the message on a sticky note. She walked to Todd's office. She placed it on his desk next to the first message, the one from 30 minutes ago that was still under his coffee cup. Todd read it. He crumpled both notes and tossed them in the trash. If the old lady's still out there, tell her we're fully booked. Kelsey hesitated.
Mr. Branson, the caller said the account is $30 million.
I don't care if it's $30 billion. I'm not dropping everything for a walk-in who can't even dress for the occasion. Tell her to make an appointment like everyone else. Kelsey walked back to her desk. She didn't deliver the message. She didn't know what to say. 15 more minutes passed. Bernice sat in the lobby. She watched 2 more white clients get escorted into the back. She watched Todd shake their hands through the glass wall of his office. She watched him offer them water. Her phone buzzed. A text from Raymond. Couldn't get through. His office is stonewalling. Sit tight. I'm making another call. She put her phone away. At 10 a.m., Todd walked out of his office again. He saw Bernice still sitting in the waiting area. His jaw tightened. He crossed the lobby, each step deliberate. Every eye in the room followed him. He stopped in front of her. Ma'am, I already explained the situation. We can't help you today without an appointment. And I already told you. I have an account here. Lots of people have accounts here. That doesn't entitle you to walk in and demand a private meeting. I'm not demanding anything. I'm asking. Todd stepped closer. He lowered his voice, but not enough. The people in the next row of chairs could hear every word. Let me be real with you. No money, no service. I don't know where you came from, and I don't care, but you're taking up space that my real clients need. So either leave on your own, or I have someone help you. Bernice looked up at him. Her voice was steady. I'm not going anywhere. Todd's face hardened. He turned to the security guard standing near the front entrance. Get her out. Now. The guard hesitated. He'd seen Bernice sitting quietly for almost an hour. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't caused any trouble. Sir, she's not really... I said now. The guard walked over. He reached for Bernice's arm. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. Bernice pulled her arm back. Don't touch me. Todd grabbed the front door and shoved it open. The glass rattled in the frame. Morning sunlight poured in. Out. Now. The guard took her arm again, firmer this time, and pulled her toward the entrance. Bernice's flat shoes dragged against the marble. Her handbag swung off her shoulder and hit the floor. A lipstick tube and a folded church bulletin rolled across the tile. She stumbled through the doorway and onto the sidewalk. Her knees hit the concrete. Her glasses flew off and cracked against the curb. Todd stood in the doorway, backlit by the lobby's fluorescent glow. He straightened his cuffs. He looked at her on the ground and said nothing. Then he walked back inside. The glass door swung shut behind him. In the lobby, no one moved. 12 customers looked at the floor, at their phones, anywhere but at the door. But one woman, a young white woman in a denim jacket sitting near the window, had her phone in her hand. The red recording light was on. She'd captured everything. Every word, every shove, every second of silence. She saved the video and slipped her phone into her pocket. Outside, Bernice sat on the curb. She picked up her cracked glasses. She put them back on. One lens had a fracture line running through the center. Through that cracked lens, she looked at the bank's front door. The digital sign behind the reception desk was still rotating. Premier Private Banking for clients who expect more. She pulled out her phone and dialed her daughter. Clarice picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Mama. How'd it go?" Bernice didn't answer right away. Clarice heard breathing, shallow, uneven. "Mama?" "They put their hands on me, Clarice." The line went quiet. Clarice was standing in her office at a law firm in downtown D.C. She set her coffee down. Her hand was steady, but her voice dropped low. "Tell me exactly what happened." "The manager wouldn't see me, wouldn't even look at my account. He called security and they dragged me out the front door. I fell on the sidewalk. My glasses broke." "Are you hurt?" "My knees are scraped up. I'm sitting on the curb." "You're still outside the bank?" "Yes." "Don't move. Don't go back in. I'm handling this." Clarice hung up. She stood in her office for 3 seconds, perfectly still. Then she picked up her phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Raymond Ellis. "Raymond, they physically removed my mother from the building." Raymond was mid-sip of his morning coffee. He set the cup down so hard it cracked the saucer. "They did what?" "Dragged her out. She's sitting on the sidewalk with broken glasses and scraped knees. She's 74 years old, Raymond." "I called the branch 30 minutes ago. His assistant blew me off." "Then stop calling the branch. Call Neil Adler, directly, on his personal line, right now." "Clarice, Raymond, $30 million of my family's money is sitting in that man's bank, and he just threw my mother on the concrete. Call Neil Adler, tell him what happened, and tell him if that money isn't in my mother's hands by noon, every news outlet in Virginia will have this story by 1. Raymond didn't argue. He hung up and scrolled to a number he hadn't used in 2 years. Clarice's second call was to her paralegal. "Clear my afternoon. Pull every federal regulation on banking discrimination. ECOA, Fair Housing Act, Title VI. I want a complaint framework drafted by 2 o'clock, and find me the direct number for the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency." "What happened?" "Heritage First National Bank just assaulted my 74-year-old mother in broad daylight. That's what happened." She grabbed her car keys, her jacket, and walked out of her office. D.C. to Richmond was 100 miles. She'd make it in 90 minutes. Inside the bank, Todd Branson was having a great morning. He leaned back in his chair, feet almost on the desk, talking on his phone. Not a client call, not a business call. His golf buddy, Scott. "Saturday works? Tea time at 10? I'll book it." He laughed at something Scott said, spun a pen between his fingers. Through the glass wall of his office, the lobby had returned to normal. Customers moved through the line. Tellers processed transactions. The plastic chair where Bernice had sat was empty now. Todd didn't think about her. He'd already moved on. To him, she was a minor inconvenience. A Tuesday morning interruption. Nothing more. He hung up with Scott and buzzed Kelsey. Any messages? No, sir. Good. Send in the Henderson appointment at 11. He adjusted his monitor, checked his reflection in the dark screen, and smiled. In the same building, 20 feet from Todd's office, Darlene Hobbs sat behind her teller window with her hands in her lap. She couldn't stop thinking about it. The look on Bernice's face when the guard grabbed her arm, the sound of her handbag hitting the marble, the way her knees buckled on the sidewalk. And the lobby. All those people, all that silence. Darlene had pulled up Bernice's account the moment Todd walked away the first time. She'd seen the number. She knew what Bernice was worth. She'd tried to tell Todd. He didn't listen. Now she pulled the account up again. She stared at the balance. $30 million in change, right there on her screen. The woman Todd had just thrown out like garbage was one of the wealthiest clients in the entire region. Darlene's stomach turned. She thought about saying something. Walking into Todd's office, showing him the screen. But she'd watched him throw a 74-year-old woman onto concrete without flinching. What would he do to a 29-year-old teller who challenged him? She closed the screen. She helped the next customer. She said nothing. But she saved a screenshot. Raymond Ellis dialed Neil Adler's personal cell at 10:32 a.m. Neil was in his corner office at Heritage First's regional headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina, 200 miles south of Richmond. He was reviewing quarterly projections when his phone lit up. He recognized the name. Raymond Ellis, old-school wealth advisor, managed several high-net-worth families across the mid-Atlantic. They'd done business together for years. Not close friends, but close enough for a personal number. Raymond, it's been a while. Neil, I'm not calling to catch up. I need you to listen carefully. Neil heard the tone. He set his pen down. I'm listening. One of your branch managers, Todd Branson, Heritage First Richmond flagship, just physically removed a client from the building. He refused to check her account, refused to see her, called security, and had her dragged out the front door. She's 74 years old. She fell on the sidewalk. Neil leaned forward. Who is the client? Bernice Owens. Silence. Bernice Owens. As in, Lionel Owens' widow. Yes, the Owens Family Trust. $30 million in assets at your institution, and your branch manager threw her on the concrete because she wasn't wearing the right shoes. Neil stood up from his desk. Raymond, I'm not finished. Bernice's daughter is Clarice Owens Foster, corporate attorney, civil rights litigation background. She's already on her way to Richmond. She's already pulling federal complaint paperwork. And she told me, if that money isn't transferred out by noon, the press gets the story by 1 o'clock. Raymond, I had no idea. That's the problem, Neil. Nobody had any idea, because nobody checked. Your man looked at a black woman in a floral dress and decided she was worthless. He didn't pull up her account, he didn't ask her name, he just threw her out. Neil was already grabbing his jacket. I'm driving to Richmond myself. You better, because in about 2 hours, this is either a private resolution or a public catastrophe. Your call. Raymond hung up. Neil stood in his office, jacket in one hand, phone in the other. He canceled his afternoon. Every meeting, every call. He told his assistant he'd be out the rest of the day. He walked to the parking garage, got in his car, and pulled onto I-85 North toward Richmond. 200 miles. He'd be there by 11:30 if he pushed it. The entire drive, one sentence played on repeat in his head. $30 million. And he threw her on the sidewalk. While Neil drove, and Clarice drove, and Raymond paced his office, something else was happening. Something Todd Branson didn't know about. Something nobody inside that bank could control. The young woman in the denim jacket, the one who'd been sitting by the window, had left the bank at 10:15. She sat in her car, hands shaking, and watched the video she'd recorded. Every word was clear. Todd's voice, the snap of his fingers, the guard grabbing Bernice's arm, the sound of her body hitting the sidewalk. She uploaded it to social media at 10:22 a.m. with one caption: "Bank manager kicks out elderly black woman for having no money. She was sitting there quietly for 40 minutes. He called security on her. This is Heritage First National Bank in Richmond. Somebody needs to see this." By 10:45, it had 50,000 views. By 11, it had 200,000. By 11:15, a Richmond news producer had sent the link to Tara Sullivan, their lead investigative reporter. Tara watched the video twice. Then she grabbed her cameraman and headed to the bank. The comments section was already on fire. Thousands of people, angry, disgusted, demanding answers. Heritage First's corporate social media accounts started getting tagged in every post. The video kept climbing. Todd Branson was in his office, reviewing his Henderson appointment notes. He was thinking about lunch. He had no idea that 3 separate forces were converging on his building: his boss from Charlotte, a corporate attorney from D.C., and a news van from Channel 12. All because he couldn't be bothered to check a screen. At 11:28 a.m., a black Mercedes pulled into the Heritage First parking lot. Neil Adler stepped out. Jacket wrinkled from 2 hours of white-knuckle driving. Jaw clenched. He didn't stop at the front desk. He didn't check in with reception. He walked straight through the lobby toward Todd's office. 2 minutes later, a second car arrived, a silver Lexus. Clarice Owens Foster stepped out in a tailored charcoal suit, heels clicking against the asphalt. Raymond Ellis climbed out of the passenger side, leather briefcase in hand, and behind them, stepping out of a 2016 Buick with a dent in the rear bumper, was Bernice Owens. Same floral dress, same worn handbag, Band-Aids on both knees, cracked glasses sitting slightly crooked on her face. She looked at the front door of the bank, the same door she'd been shoved through 3 hours ago. She walked toward it. Inside, Todd was mid-sentence with his Henderson clients when he glanced through the glass wall. He saw Neil Adler crossing the lobby. His mouth stopped moving. His pen slipped from his fingers. Neil Adler didn't visit branches. Neil Adler sent emails. Neil Adler sent memos. Neil Adler did not drive 200 miles on a Tuesday without warning. Todd excused himself from the Hendersons. He stepped out of his office, straightened his tie, and extended his hand. "Neil, what a surprise. I didn't know you were—" Neil walked past him, didn't take the hand, didn't slow down. "Your office, now." Todd's smile collapsed. He followed Neil into his own office like a guest. Neil closed the door. He didn't sit. "Do you know who you removed from this building this morning?" Todd's eyes shifted. There was a woman who didn't have an appointment. She was being disruptive, so I asked security to—" "Her name?" "I don't remember her." "Bernice Owens." Todd blinked. "Does that name mean anything to you?" No." "Lionel Owens. Owens and Pratt Logistics. Ring a bell?" Todd's face started to change. A slow drain of color, starting at his cheeks and moving downward. "The Owens Family Trust holds $30 million in this branch, Todd. $30 million. She is one of the largest individual clients in this entire region. And you called security. You had a guard drag her out the front door. She fell on the sidewalk. She's 74 years old." "Neil, nobody told me." "Nobody told you?" Neil stepped closer. "Your teller told you. She flagged the account as premier. Your phone log shows 2 calls from her financial advisor, both ignored. The system flagged her as high value the second her ID was scanned. You had every piece of information you needed, and you threw it all away because you looked at her and decided she didn't matter. Todd opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She's here, Todd. She's in the lobby, right now, with her attorney daughter, with her financial advisor, and she's about to withdraw every dollar her family has in this institution. Todd grabbed the edge of his desk. Neil, let me talk to her. Let me explain. You're not talking to anyone. You're not leaving this office. You're going to sit here and watch. Neil opened the door. Bernice was already seated in the private banking suite. The same room, the glass door, the leather chairs, the room Todd had told her she wasn't qualified to enter. Clarice sat beside her. Raymond stood at the end of the table, opening his briefcase and laying out paperwork. Transfer authorization forms, trust documentation, account closure requests. Darlene had been pulled from her window to assist with processing. Her hands were trembling as she logged into the terminal. Raymond slid the first document across the table. Bernice, this authorizes the full transfer of $30 million in trust assets from Heritage First National Bank to Atlantic Union Trust, effective immediately. Bernice picked up the pen. She didn't hesitate. She signed. Second document, signed. Third document, signed. Each signature was steady. Each one was final. Through the glass wall of the private suite, Bernice could see Todd standing in the hallway, arms at his sides, face gray, watching $30 million walk out of his building, one signature at a time. She looked at him, held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then she said, just loud enough for him to hear through the glass, I hope your next customer gets better service. She stood. Clarice took her arm. Raymond collected the paperwork. They walked through the lobby together, the same lobby where Bernice had been humiliated. The same marble floor her handbag had spilled across. The same plastic chair she'd sat in for 40 minutes, waiting for someone to treat her like a human being. She walked out the front door at 11:58 a.m. By noon, the money was gone. The glass door of the private suite was still warm when Neil Adler turned to Todd. Badge, laptop, now. Todd stood in the hallway. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, not yet. From disbelief. Like a man watching his house burn and still thinking someone might put it out. Neil, if you just let me explain. Explain what? That you assaulted a 74-year-old woman in front of a dozen witnesses? That you ignored 3 separate warnings about her account? That you cost this bank $30 million in a single morning? I was following protocol. She was an unverified walk-in. There is no protocol on this earth that tells you to drag an elderly woman onto a sidewalk. Neil's voice was low, controlled, worse than shouting. Give me your badge. Todd reached into his jacket. His fingers fumbled with the clip. He pulled the badge free and held it out. Neil took it without looking at it. Laptop. Todd walked into his office. Every teller on the floor watched him through the glass. He unplugged his laptop, closed it, and carried it back. He handed it to Neil like a man handing over a piece of himself. You're on immediate administrative leave, effective right now, pending a full internal investigation. Do not contact any staff. Do not contact any clients. Do not set foot in any Heritage First branch. Neil, please, I've given this company 4 years, and in one morning, you undid all of it. Neil turned to the security guard standing near the lobby entrance. The same guard who'd grabbed Bernice's arm 3 hours ago. The man's face was gray. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. Escort Mr. Branson out of the building. Todd's mouth opened, then closed. The guard walked over. He didn't grab Todd's arm. He didn't need to. Todd looked at the lobby, at Darlene behind her window, at Kelsey frozen at her desk, at the customers pretending not to stare. And he understood.
He was being removed from his own bank. The same way he'd removed Bernice. He walked to the front door. The guard held it open. Todd stepped onto the sidewalk. The same sidewalk where Bernice's knees had hit concrete, where her glasses had cracked, where her handbag had spilled open for everyone to see. The glass door swung shut behind him. He stood there for a moment, alone, in the midday sun. His reflection stared back at him from the bank's front window. No badge, no laptop, no title. He walked to his car and sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes without starting the engine. Inside, the dam broke. Darlene Hobbs asked to speak with Neil Adler privately. He agreed. They sat in the conference room, the same room where Todd had entertained his golf buddies and his favorite clients. Darlene told him everything. 18 months of watching Todd route minority clients away from premium services. Black customers sent to the general window. Latino families redirected to community banking. An elderly Asian couple told the private suite was fully booked when it was empty. She described the pattern calmly, clearly. She had dates. She had the screenshot of Bernice's account she'd saved that morning. "I should have said something sooner," she said. "I was scared." "You're saying something now," Neil said. "That matters." Two other tellers, both junior staff, both women, came forward within the hour. Their statements matched Darlene's. Different dates, different clients, same pattern. Todd's assistant, Kelsey, provided the phone logs. 2 calls from Raymond Ellis, both documented, both ignored on Todd's direct orders. Neil sat alone in the conference room after the last interview. He rubbed his face with both hands. The investigation hadn't even officially started, and the case was already airtight. His phone buzzed. A text from Heritage First's corporate communications director. "Have you seen social media? The video has 1.5 million views. Channel 12 news van is parked outside the Richmond branch. We need a statement. Now." Neil looked through the conference room window, through the lobby, through the glass front doors. He could see the Channel 12 van in the parking lot. Tara Sullivan was standing on the sidewalk with a microphone, filming a segment with the bank's entrance in the background. He picked up his phone and called corporate. "I know," he said. "I'm handling it." But he knew, they all knew, this was already past the point of handling. Todd sat in his car in the parking lot of a gas station 2 miles from the bank. He'd driven there on autopilot. He didn't remember the route. He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer. "I need help. I got suspended. They're saying I discriminated against a client." "What happened?" Todd told his version. A walk-in without documentation, no appointment. He was enforcing bank policy. She became disruptive. He asked security to assist. His lawyer listened, then asked one question. "Is there video?" Todd paused. "I don't know." "Find out. Because if there's video, your version doesn't matter. Only theirs." Todd hung up and opened social media for the first time that day. The video was the first thing on his feed. 1.5 million views. His face. His voice. His words. Clear as glass. "No money, no service. Get this woman out of my lobby." He watched himself shove the door open. He watched Bernice stumble. He watched her knees hit concrete. He closed the app, set the phone face down on the passenger seat, and for the first time all day, Todd Branson was afraid. Tara Sullivan's report aired at 6 o'clock that evening. She opened with the cell phone footage, unedited, uncut. Todd's voice filled living rooms across Richmond. "You reek of poverty. Drag this thing out. No money, no service." Then Bernice on the sidewalk, knees on concrete, glasses cracked, handbag spilled open, a church bulletin blowing across the pavement. Tara stood in front of the Heritage First building, microphone in hand. The woman in this video is Bernice Owens, widow of Lionel Owens, co-founder of Owens and Pratt Logistics, one of the most successful minority-owned companies in East Coast history. Her family trust held over $30 million at this branch. She came in this morning to conduct routine business. She was removed by force. By noon, she had withdrawn every cent. The segment included an interview with a banking discrimination expert from Howard University, who called the footage a textbook example of racial profiling in financial services. He explained that what happened to Bernice wasn't rare, it was just rarely caught on camera. Tara closed the piece with a single line. Heritage First National Bank has not yet responded to our request for comment. By 8 o'clock, every major network had picked up the story. CNN ran the footage during prime time. The caption read, "Elderly black woman thrown out of bank was their wealthiest client." MSNBC followed at 9. Fox covered it from the angle of corporate liability. The Washington Post published an online piece before midnight. The New York Times had a reporter assigned by morning. The video crossed 5 million views overnight. Heritage First's corporate office issued a statement at 7 a.m. Wednesday. "We are aware of the incident at our Richmond branch and are deeply troubled by the conduct displayed. An internal investigation is underway. The employee in question has been placed on administrative leave. Heritage First is committed to treating every client with dignity and respect, regardless of race, gender, or background." The internet tore it apart. "Deeply troubled" trended on social media alongside the video. People posted screenshots of the statement next to the image of Bernice on the sidewalk. The contrast said everything the statement tried to avoid. By Wednesday afternoon, Heritage First's stock had dropped 3%. Institutional investors started making phone calls. The board demanded answers. The internal investigation took 9 days. Neil Adler oversaw it personally. He brought in an outside compliance firm to avoid any appearance of self-protection. The findings were devastating. Todd Branson had systematically routed minority clients away from premium services at a rate 4 times higher than white clients with comparable account balances. The data went back 3 years, his entire tenure as branch manager. He had overridden system alerts on Bernice's account. When Darlene flagged her as Premier Tier, the system generated an automatic notification to the branch manager. Todd dismissed it without opening it. The digital log showed he cleared the alert in under 2 seconds. Raymond Ellis's 2 phone calls were documented in the phone system. Both logged. Both marked "message delivered to Mr. Branson." Todd told Kelsey to ignore them. Kelsey's statement confirmed it. 3 prior complaints from minority clients had been filed at the branch over the previous 18 months. All 3 were processed through the branch manager's office, Todd's office. All 3 were marked resolved, no action needed. None were escalated to regional. None were investigated. Todd had been his own oversight, and he'd buried every warning. Darlene's testimony, backed by the 2 other tellers, painted a clear pattern. Black and Latino clients were consistently seated in the general waiting area. White clients with lower account balances were escorted to the private suite. One teller described watching Todd walk past a black businessman with a 6-figure account to greet a white college student opening a starter checking account. The compliance firm's conclusion was 1 paragraph long. It used words like systemic, deliberate, and pervasive. On a Friday morning, 11 days after the incident, Heritage First National Bank officially terminated Todd Branson for cause. The termination letter cited 3 violations: discriminatory client treatment in violation of company policy and federal law, failure to follow client verification procedures, and fostering a hostile environment for both customers and staff. Todd's lawyer tried to negotiate a quiet separation, a resignation instead of a termination, a neutral reference letter,
a small severance. Heritage First refused everything. The termination was final, public, and permanent. That same Friday, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency announced a formal review of Heritage First's branch-level compliance practices. The OCC had received over 2,000 public complaints in the 10 days since the video went viral. The review would examine whether the failures at the Richmond branch were isolated or symptomatic of a broader institutional problem. Heritage First cooperated fully. They had no choice. The settlement came 3 weeks later. Clarice Owens Foster didn't just want money, she wanted structural change. The agreement had two parts. The first was a private financial settlement between Heritage First and the Owens family. The amount was undisclosed, but multiple sources familiar with the negotiation described it as substantial. Bernice donated her entire share to charity. She didn't need their money. She never had. The second part was public. Heritage First agreed to implement a chain-wide blind screening protocol, a system where every client's account status is verified electronically before any staff member can make routing decisions. No more visual assessments. No more gut feelings. No more Todd Branson's deciding who looks wealthy enough to deserve respect. Clarice partnered with the National Urban League to push the protocol beyond Heritage First. She testified before a congressional subcommittee on banking practices and presented Darlene's data alongside the compliance firm's findings. "My mother walked into a bank to move her own money," Clarice told the committee. "She was dragged out like a criminal because of the color of her skin and the shoes on her feet. The system that allowed this isn't broken. It was built this way. We need to rebuild it." Within 6 months, 2 other major national banks adopted similar blind screening protocols. A third announced a pilot program. Todd Branson disappeared from public life. No major bank in Virginia, D.C., or the Carolinas would hire him. His name was the first result on Google, permanently attached to the video, the termination, the OCC review. 4 years of career building erased in a single morning. He eventually took a job at a small credit union in western Pennsylvania. No management authority, no client-facing responsibilities, a desk in a back office processing paperwork. 6 months after the incident, a journalist tracked him down for a podcast interview. Todd agreed to speak on the condition of anonymity, though everyone knew who he was. He said, "I made a snap judgment. I was wrong. It cost me everything I built." The interviewer asked if he considered what he did to be racism. Todd paused for 4 seconds. "I think I treated her differently than I would have treated someone who looked different. I don't know what you call that." The interviewer didn't push. The audience didn't need him to. Everyone listening knew exactly what to call it. Bernice moved her money to Atlantic Union Trust, a Black-owned financial institution based in Richmond. It was a bank Lionel had talked about supporting years ago. He'd met the founder at a business conference in the late 90s. They'd shaken hands, exchanged cards, promised to follow up. Life got in the way. Lionel got sick. The card sat in a drawer. Bernice found it 3 weeks after the incident. She was cleaning out Lionel's desk, something she'd been putting off for 3 years. The card was tucked between a stack of old receipts and a faded photograph of the two of them standing in front of their first warehouse. She called the number the next morning. "My name is Bernice Owens. My husband always meant to do business with you. I'd like to finish what he started." That fall, Bernice established the Lionel Owens Community Trust. The fund provided financial literacy programs in underserved neighborhoods across Richmond. Free workshops on budgeting, saving, building credit, understanding loans. The kind of knowledge that banks like Heritage First never bothered to offer the communities they profited from. The first class had 14 people. By the end of the year, over 600 had gone through the program. A retired teacher from Church Hill told a local reporter it was the first time anyone had explained a mortgage to her in plain English. Bernice attended every single graduation ceremony. She sat in the front row. She shook every hand. She told every graduate the same thing Lionel used to tell her. Money talks, but it don't need to scream. Darlene Hobbs was promoted to assistant branch manager at Heritage First's Richmond location. Neil Adler made the appointment personally. He told Darlene she'd shown more integrity in a single morning than Todd had shown in 4 years. Darlene became the branch's internal advocate for equitable client treatment. She led the rollout of the blind screening protocol at the Richmond location, the first branch in the chain to adopt it. She trained new tellers. She reviewed routing data monthly. She built the system that should have existed before Bernice ever walked through those doors. When the National Urban League recognized Heritage First's reforms at their annual gala, Darlene was the one they invited to speak. She stood at the podium, looked out at the audience, and said, "I watched it happen. I was 20 feet away, and I didn't stop it. That's something I carry with me every day. But I decided that silence was a one-time mistake, not a lifestyle. And if you've ever watched something wrong happen and said nothing, I'm telling you, it's not too late. It's never too late." The room gave her a standing ovation. On a Saturday morning in October, Bernice was in her garden. The Richmond air was cool. The leaves on her magnolia tree had started to turn. She was on her knees in the dirt, planting tulip bulbs along the front walk, the same walk Lionel had poured himself 40 years ago. Her phone rang. "Hey, Mama." "Hey, baby. You sitting down?" "I'm in the garden. What is it?" Clarice's voice was smiling. "The blind screening bill just passed committee. Bipartisan vote. It's moving to the full floor next month." Bernice set down her trowel. She looked up at the sky, wide and blue and October clear. "Your father would have loved this." "Yeah, he would have." They stayed on the line for a moment. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Bernice hung up. She picked up her trowel. She went back to planting. The sun was warm on her back. The soil was soft in her hands. The house behind her was quiet, the way it always was now. But it didn't feel empty anymore. She had $30 million in a bank that respected her, a daughter who fought like hell, a fund carrying her husband's name into neighborhoods that needed it, and a magnolia tree that Lionel planted the year they bought the house, still standing, still growing, still reaching toward the light. She wiped the dirt from her hands and smiled. "So let me ask you this. Have you ever walked into a room and felt someone decide who you were before you said a single word? Have you ever been overlooked, dismissed, pushed aside, not because of anything you did, but because of how you looked? Or maybe you've been on the other side. Maybe you watched it happen to someone else, and you didn't say anything. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't know what to say. If that's you, drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it, every single one. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been that person in the lobby, or someone who needs to understand what it feels like. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and hit that bell, because every story we tell on this channel is about people who refused to be invisible. I'll see you in the next one.
So lady argued this, Bernie Owens had $30 million in that bank, and the man looked at her and decided she was nothing. 3 hours later, he was the one standing on that sidewalk, alone. But still what gets me, it wasn't the money that destroyed Todd Brunson, it was the assumption. He looked at a 74-year-old black woman and thought he already knew her story. He didn't check. He didn't ask. He just decided. And Bernice, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She signed her name 3 times, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I hope the next customer get better service." That's not revenge. That's a woman who never needed a bank manager to tell her what she was worth. But this isn't really about $30 million, is it? It's about every room you ever walked into, where someone decided who you were before you opened your mouth. So here's what I want you to know. When was the last time you judged someone by what you saw and got it completely wrong? Drop that story in the comments. Be honest, those are the ones that matter. If this story hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't, hit that bell, because every story on this channel is about people who refuse to be invisible. I'll see you in the next one.